Nerderotic.com.
I have seen Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and after seeing it, it should have been called Shang-Chi's Sister and the Legend of the Ten Bracelets. According to the professional critics, Shang-Chi's Sister and the Legend of the Ten Bracelets is an absolute triumph. I am very sorry to report that it isn't. I would love to be telling you that, but then I would be lying. You know, there was a time where the professional critic was respected, the time of Siskel and Ebert or Rex Reed, but those days are long gone. Now, integrity can be bought with a simple early screening, a gift bag, and a tuna sandwich.
It's awesome.
What worked for me in The Suicide Squad was the characters. They were compelling enough for me not to think too much about the very basic plot. Shang-Chi does not have that going for it. Unfortunately, its worst character is its main character. He should be called Soy-Chi. One of the many problems with this film is how Disney Marvel approaches the source material that they call problematic. Now, Shang-Chi's dad in the comics is Fu Manchu, the very stereotypical character from the pulps in the early 1900s, a character that Marvel does not own, but they end up just renaming Fu Manchu due to cultural sensitivity to the Mandarin. And while dancing around these stereotypes and trying to stay as far away from them as possible, they end up doing damage to the actual villain by making him weak. Marvel's writing has gone downhill. It's been outright atrocious, and it's not much better here. This is, at best, pre-packaged Disney Marvel product. Now, this film isn't woke or filled with identity politics. No, that was in the marketing, which led directly to the overpraise.
The Marvel Universe is adding another superhero to their lineup, but this time it is history-making. For the first time, an Asian superhero will grace the big screen with mind-blowing action, stunning visuals, and, of course, Marvel's signature storyline.
There's going to be spoilers, and I'm going to be mispronouncing a lot of names and places. I'm not going to bury the lead here. This thing is as MCU as it gets. But there are already narrative problems without the identity politics or the intersectional feminism. There's the 5-year blip, which they just breeze past like it's just this thing we have to acknowledge, but we don't really want to get into it. When you have half the population disappear from a planet and then reappear 5 years later, that's not just something you recover from in a year or 2 or 10. Then there's the fact that you're missing 2 of your biggest superheroes and you haven't even come close to replacing them yet. Iron Man is dead. Captain America is essentially dead. Falcon Cap is not Captain America. Steve Rogers is. And only Tony Stark can be Iron Man. You don't even have Black Panther now. Yeah, you have Spider-Boy, but for how long? Thor, for how long? And we'll get to Mark Ruffalo's Hulk or Bruce Banner a little bit later. I guess we'll start with this film not really knowing what it wants to be. It starts out as a rom-com, turns into a street-fighting crime adventure, and then goes full-blown never-ending story fantasy. It wants to be Big Trouble in Little China, but it isn't. The film starts out with a quick history of the Mandarin, who is really just Fu Manchu, but we're going to call him the Mandarin. He finds 10 rings. How does he find them? Where does he find them? Doesn't matter. He conquers some Ottomans, he conquers some Romans, blows up a parliament building, and then it's 1996. And because Kang willed it, the Mandarin has decided he has conquered enough and he is looking for something a little different. And there's a realm called Tai Lao. Now, I originally thought this would be Kunlun, a city in a different dimension, which is one of the 7 capitals of heaven. If you saw Iron Fist season 1 or 2, you would know about this. Now, I'm guessing they didn't use Kunlun because they've used it in the comics before, because of possibly the Tibet connection or the Dalai Lama. Who knows? We wouldn't want to offend that Chinese censorship, not that it matters, because this movie's probably not going to play in China, nor are any other Disney films in the very near future. Seems to be a little bit of a problem there, and that just makes me happy. Now, this film stars Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, Awkwafina as Marvel's Katie, and we will talk about her, and yes, we do get a little bit of the black scent, and Tony Leung as the Mandarin, Michelle Yeoh as Auntie, and we also have one of the most important characters in this film that the trailers don't really tell you about, Shang-Chi's sister, Zhe Ling, who is the main character of this film, practically. She's far more impressive than Shang-Chi, and we'll get to that. The Mandarin makes it to Tai Lao, and he meets Shang-Chi's mom, Li. She fights him, beats him, and then they fall in love, have sex, have kids, and she leaves Tai Lao, and she leaves her powers behind. Fast forward to modern day San Francisco, the town I abandoned just over a year ago. Very happy to do it. So they give you those establishing shots that you usually see for San Francisco to give you a flavor for the city. They show Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge and Ghirardelli Square and Lombard Street, but they miss the true flavor of the city. You don't see the Tenderloin, transvestite hookers, or poop on the sidewalk, or even better, a used heroin needle sticking out of the human feces on the sidewalk. This is where we meet Sean and Marvel's Katie, the prototypical will they, won't they rom-com couple that I don't believe for 1 second, who are just kind of breezing through life in their 20s, going to karaoke, they're valets, they're not really ambitious. At this point, I'm not really having a problem with the film. We're doing some characterization. We're meeting some family members that we're never going to see again for the rest of the film. Then an Asian guy gets attacked on a San Francisco bus, which means it's a day that ends in Y. Now, this film was based on a comic called The Hands of Shang-Chi, the Master of Kung Fu, or The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, which was the magazine that Marvel released. Both would have been better titles than Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I thought there would be wall-to-wall kung fu in this film, and there isn't. But one of the better scenes is the ridiculous scene in the bus. Shang-Chi is attacked by Razor Fist. Not that Razor Fist. So not to be outdone by the end of Black Widow, where the Red Room was falling out of the sky for 30 minutes, we have a bus without brakes with a kung fu fight inside going downhill for 6 minutes in San Francisco. A quick side note. This is the part where you should be building up your main character, Shang-Chi, making him the badass that we're all going to this film to see. Unfortunately, that never happens in this film, and it's the little things. So we're going to go back real quick to a scene where the two valets, Sean and Marvel's Katie, take a car on a joyride because every Hollywood film has the valets taking a car on the joyride. And mind you, this is just an observation. During this scene, Marvel's Katie is driving and Sean is in the passenger seat looking nervous. Later on in the film, Marvel's Katie is driving a car and Shang-Chi is in the backseat looking a little nervous. It's the little things. We're trying to build up Shang-Chi here, but instead we're building up Marvel's Katie. This was a pretty good fight on a bus descending down a San Francisco hill for 6 minutes, inexplicably, and they crash at the end, probably because Marvel's Katie is driving, and they are able to escape Razor Fist and his gang, but he does lose the amulet, which is a key to the realm of Tai Lao. Then we're reminded that Shang-Chi received a mysterious card from his sister. Now, Marvel's Katie had no idea that Shang-Chi knew Kung Fu at all, or that he had a sister, although they knew each other for 10 years. So she's a little surprised and a little upset. Because it's convenient for the script and Kang probably willed it, Shang-Chi quickly figures out that the Mandarin is after his sister. Marvel's Katie is going to go with him, and she's not going to take no for an answer. And somehow on a valet's salary, they're able to jump on a plane and go to China.
You change your name from Shang to Sean? It's like, hi, my name's Gina. I'm going to go into hiding. My new name is Gina.
Remember when I said this is 3 films put into one? Well, this ends the sitcom portion of our film, and we transition pretty roughly into the street crime portion of our film, but not before we get some exposition on a plane ride. Mom died at an early age at this point in the film. We're not really sure how. Shang-Chi is trained by not only the Mandarin, but the best of the best, including Death Dealer in his Ten Rings organization, when the Mandarin sends him on his first assignment, which we are not aware of at this time. He abandons his father and his sister, who his father would not train. Now, we're about a quarter or a third of the way through the film, and it's becoming pretty clear that Simu Liu, I'm just going to say Simu from now on, doesn't have a lot of screen presence, doesn't have a lot of charisma, doesn't have a lot of chemistry with Awkwafina, and the script doesn't do him any favors at all. I think it would have been pretty important to show how young Shang-Chi survived in just a quick montage in a foreign country to help build up the badass that the deadly hands of Shang-Chi, the master of Kung Fu, is supposed to be, but instead, they build up the badass that is Shang-Chi's sister, Zhe Ling. So they arrive in China. Halfway up a skyscraper, there's a fight club, and in this fight club is Wong from Doctor Strange fighting a proper abomination with ears, which was the best part of this film, and it was over in a minute. Turns out this fight club is run by Shang-Chi's sister. Oh, and it gets so much better. They turned the MCU up to 11. Remember when I said Shang-Chi was trained by the Mandarin and Death Dealer and the best of the best the Ten Rings organization had to offer, and they wouldn't train his sister? That's okay. She trained herself in the shadows, a superhuman form of Kung Fu that is far superior to Shang-Chi's. She actually fights him in this fight club and beats him, and of course, kicks him in the balls. Shang-Chi abandoned his sister. She waited for a couple of years and then she ran away herself after she taught herself the superhuman form of Kung Fu, and at the age of 16 started a fight club halfway up a skyscraper in China. For real. With clients like the Abomination and Wong from Doctor Strange. Yes, the plot contrivances get even worse. The whole thing turned out to be a trap set by the Mandarin. He was watching Shang-Chi and his sister the whole time. He gave them 10 years to do something with their life, and he decided to go get his kids back. There's a pretty good short fight scene between Shang-Chi and Death Dealer, which I wish we would have gotten a lot more of. Marvel's Katie gets herself in a little bit of trouble. She actually looks like a damsel in distress. At this point, I knew it was going to be Shang-Chi's sister who saves her and not Shang-Chi, and that's exactly what happened. It's getting comical at this point. From here on out, I'm just going to call him Beta Chi because that's what he is. Disney Marvel absolutely refuses to put alpha males in their films anymore, and they're trying to deconstruct the ones that already existed that they didn't start with. Just calling it the way I see it. There is no way in hell any normal scriptwriter would approach a Shang-Chi film like this. It should have been a hard-rated R. It should have been The Raid. It should have been bloody and violent and sexy. Instead, we get a rom-com fantasy Disney Princess Beta Chi story. So the Mandarin captures his kids and Marvel's Katie and brings them back to his compound where he tells them he just wants to get the family back together. And what's caused all this? Well, throughout the film, they kind of piece together what happened in the past. The Mandarin met Li, Shang-Chi's mom, decided he wanted to give up the life of crime and give up the rings. She gave up her power so they could raise a family. But the Mandarin's past came back to haunt him, and while he was off getting groceries or cigarettes, mom got killed right in front of Shang-Chi. That made the Mandarin pretty mad. He puts the rings back on and starts his criminal organization again. Did I mention they don't bring up the 5-year blip other than just for 30 seconds in the beginning of the film, and they really don't go over it here, which would have been kind of important. What happened to the organization during the 5-year blip doesn't matter. We do find out what Shang-Chi's first assignment was. It was to kill the killer of his mom, which he did, but then he abandoned his father. Like I said, the Mandarin isn't really that badass, and he just misses his wife, and the reason he got his family back together is he's hearing his dead wife's voice coming from Tai Lao saying that she's trapped there. Now, apparently, Li, Shang-Chi's mom, wanted to take the whole family back to Tai Lao or Tai Lo, but they wouldn't allow it because of the Mandarin's past. That's why the Mandarin blames them for her death. Now that the Mandarin has the whole family together, he wants to go invade Tai Lao or Tai Lo, but they don't know how to get there. Luckily, speaking of plot contrivances, while Shang-Chi, Zhe Ling, and Marvel's Katie are trapped in the dungeon, they run into Trevor Slattery, the other Mandarin, who just so happens to know how to get to Tai Lo because he has a little furry, headless wing beast that knows how to get there. So they steal Razor Fist's car, and they drive to another realm through a moving forest. Of course, Marvel's Katie is driving and Shang-Chi is in the backseat freaking out. Now the film slows to an absolute halt when they get to Tai Lao and they meet Shang-Chi's aunt, Michelle Yeoh, who, of course, knows how to fight just like his mom did. I also forgot to mention that Shang-Chi's mom trained him in her kung fu ways as well. So this village in another realm is filled with crazy creatures, weird looking horses, Chinese lions, and Chinese dragons. And yes, they guard a gate, and behind that gate is a giant soul-sucking demon dragon thing. Somehow, and they don't really explain this, the demon behind the gate is able to telepathically contact the Mandarin and impersonate his dead wife's voice and project her image. We just know that the soul-sucking demon wants to escape. We don't know why. We don't know who this demon is. We don't get any background at all because it doesn't really matter. Auntie Michelle finishes Shang-Chi's training. Of course, Zailing finishes her own training on her own. Not that she needed it because she was already perfect. And Marvel's Katie learns how to shoot a bow and arrow. And this is very important because we're seeing the origin of another classic Marvel character, Marvel's Katie. After wasting a bunch of time on Shang-Chi's mom, and yes, this did end up being the Asian Black Panther, where they spent a lot more time on the female characters than the main character. The Mandarin decides to eventually invade Tai Lo, and there's a big CGI kung fu fight. The Mandarin fights Shang-Chi, punches him into a lake where he floats for half the battle, but then he's eventually saved by a dragon that he flies around for most of the ending of the film. The Mandarin makes it to the gate, starts punching it, and releasing soul-sucking demons, just little ones at first, and you would think after releasing those soul-sucking demons, he might think that his wife isn't behind the gate, but nope, he keeps punching. At this point, the two armies that are fighting each other decided to team up and fight the soul-sucking demons. Shang-Chi is riding around a dragon, Marvel's Katie is shooting arrows, and the Mandarin keeps punching the gate where he eventually releases the big soul-sucking demon, who goes and fights the dragon at the end of the Shang-Chi movie. The Mandarin finally sees the error of his ways and gives his rings to Shang-Chi, and then they ride around some monsters some more while they fight, and eventually Marvel's Katie saves the day by shooting an arrow through the soul-sucking demon's throat. Shang-Chi then finishes off the soul-sucking demon with his rings, and the film pretty much ends there with a dark, motion-blurred filled third act where you couldn't really tell what was going on, and our main character ended up needing a lot of help from the ladies, a big CGI dragon, and eventually the villain when he gave up his bracelets, and all Shang-Chi did was remember what his mom taught him. This leads us to probably what is going to be the most talked about thing from this film, the end credits scene. Wong interrupts Marvel's Katie and Shang-Chi while they're talking to a couple in San Francisco and brings them to the Sanctum Sanctorum. And they try to get to the bottom of what those 10 rings are because we never find out. Captain Marvel is there. So is Bruce Banner, looking like Carol O'Connor. Mark Ruffalo's really let himself go. And we also need to stop calling these things rings because they're bracelets. And it turns out that they are a beacon, which leads everyone to believe Galactus is on his way. And there would have been a day I would have been so excited about this, but now I'm just, oh no. They'll probably make Galactus a female, and when we eventually meet her, she'll just be sitting at a giant desk telling us how she eats planets. Now, is this the worst Marvel film ever made? No, not even close. It's not even as bad as Black Widow. Its worst offense is it's boring. It slows down to a crawl, and it doesn't really focus on the main character that much. It almost seems like it's apologetic about it. Again, Shang-Chi is starting to look a lot like Black Panther. A lot of overpraise because there is no way in hell this is an absolute triumph. At best, it's an average movie that focuses way too much on the side characters. Oh, and there's also a scene where the Asians talk privately. Wong speaks to Shang-Chi and Marvel's Katie and warns them that they have stepped into a bigger world, meaning Marvel's Katie is an actual superhero. She shot one arrow. Awkwafina doesn't even look like she can run. I know it's part of her act, but she walks like an old lady. She's the Asian Tig Notaro. And this film most definitely has that current year trope of supermodels beating the crap out of 300-pound Russian guys. This film is a practice in the Hollywood bad dad trope. The Mandarin taught Shang-Chi all of the deadly and evil ways of combat, but his mother and his aunt taught him the more peaceful, elegant ways of combat. And to prove that this is a film about Shang-Chi's sister, the final credit scene is Zailing taking over the 10 rings and saying, "We've got work to do." And that's where the film ultimately ends. And our main character falls into the background. I said earlier that there wasn't really any chemistry between Shang-Chi and Marvel's Katie as far as being lovers is concerned, because I don't buy that for a second. I could buy them as buddies. And the big badass Mandarin, like this film, just ends up being forgettable. So the movie about the master of Kung Fu had Kung Fu in it, but it wasn't that impressive. He ended up riding monsters around and having them do all the heavy lifting. So one of the many problems Disney Marvel has forging ahead is trying to fit the square peg of street-level superheroes into the round hole of PG-13 content. Daredevil has heightened senses, but he beats the crap out of people. Black Widow is an assassin. Hawkeye shoots arrows. And Shang-Chi is supposed to be the master of Kung Fu, which is fighting, beating the crap out of people. It's violence. Now, this film is almost a bait and switch. I might have felt differently if we got a better performance out of Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, which was flat at best. Awkwafina played Awkwafina pretty well. Michelle Yeoh played a stoic Michelle Yeoh pretty well. Tony Leung could have probably put in a good performance, but he got cut off at the knees by the script. And Ben Kingsley's Trevor Slattery is just comic relief, and I don't think it's going to make anybody feel better about Iron Man 3 anytime soon. And once again, as far as the professional critics or shills are concerned, they have been exposed. I can see them liking this movie, but calling it an absolute triumph, calling it a top 3 Marvel film is ridiculous. As a matter of fact, the films that have been criticized in the past, like Thor Dark World and Iron Man 2, are looking a lot better these days. I will not be purchasing the 4K Blu-ray of Shang-Chi. I will not be watching this movie again, and I recommend you save your 2 hours and go mow the lawn, pay some bills, call an old friend, say hi to your mom, or just take a nap. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.